Hey there, how's it going? Let's talk about the best lures for February bass. Now, what I do here is bait finesse style. So I'm pretty much always throwing finesse baits. Some people would argue that some of the stuff that I throw is more power finesse or not even finesse at all. You know, I like to throw my Whopper Plopper 90 and 75 every once in a while in the summer. During February, this style of finesse presentation, it really comes in handy. The fish are still sluggish, at least up north here. You know, as you get down south, maybe they're starting to really get into pre-spawn. But up here, they're still in their winter pattern. And they're maybe, if the weather's right, they're just starting to come out of it. So in today's 5-Minute Friday, I'm going to talk about the 3 lures that I plan on using in February to try to catch maybe a personal best bass. So let's put 5 minutes on the timer, maybe right over here. I think that's where it goes. It might be over here, but no, it's over here. So put 5 minutes on the timer somewhere and let's roll. So the first up is the jerk bait. The jerk bait, it imitates like a dying minnow or shad. And honestly, often in the wintertime, you know, those smaller fish are affected by the cold temperatures. Shouldn't really be a lack of oxygen, but it's just the cold temperature really shocks them. And sometimes they get caught in too shallow water or too close to the surface. And so then they sort of, you know, they'll swim a little bit and then they'll stop. And then they'll swim a little bit and they'll twitch a little bit and they'll stop. And that's what a jerkbait really does. I really like to use suspending jerkbaits. I don't fish a ton of deep water. Might get into more of it this year. But the suspending jerkbait is awesome because what happens is it'll twitch, and so you'll get that twitch, 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 and then it'll sit there. And this is the Duo Realis 63 Rosante SP. Actually, I think this is a clone of it, but it functions the same way. And what happens is it sits there, and then it just gradually, very slowly sinks. And so if a bass is right behind it, that jerkbait's going to just slowly sink down to the point where they just like, oh, I got to get it. That's the jerkbait. I think as they start coming out of the deep, this is one of the first baits that you're going to start catching them on. So there's the jerkbait. Be thrilled if I catch a bunch of fish on this, but I love the way the action is and it casts great. The next bait is the jig. Now jigs are great because you can fish them shallow, you can fish them deep. Here's one that's on the smaller side. Finesse jigs are going to sink more slowly. And honestly, the trailer will help them sink a little bit more slowly too. And that's part of why I like the jig this time of year, because if they are getting up off the bottom a little bit, you put a nice chunk trailer of some sort on here that matches the size of the jig appropriately. You know, not a swim bait style, not a paddle tail, but something flat like a crawl or a chunk. It's going to really slow the sink rate. So similar to that jerk bait, it's going to fall nice and slow. And even if the fish are up off the bottom or starting to suspend, when that's falling through the water column real slow, then they're gonna bite it. You can also fish it around structure and cover. You know, as they start getting onto the points, some of them are going to move up into the logs and stuff. Bass are going to start feeding a little bit more as February goes on, and depending on how mild the month is, sometimes they'll start getting pretty aggressive. You don't want a lot of action. You're not going to swim this. You're almost going to move it like a Ned rig. You're just going to drag it along and be very subtle. You know, these can be fantastic for catching bass year-round, but especially in the spring. So when it comes to jigs, I'll be throwing the Kitech Monospin a lot. This is a nice small one for when they're really finicky. But I've also got the Strike King Bitsy Bug and this is the Z-Man Micro Finesse jig. Got a handful of jigs, but those will probably be the ones that I throw most often. And then the last bait is the chatterbait, also known as a bladed jig. I could have said a lipless crankbait, but it's been a mild winter, and I really think that by the end of February, the bass in my region are going to be starting to get a little bit more aggressive. And so that's why the chatterbait, you know, it's the kind of bait that you can cover some water with. It just catches fish. And sometimes you have those days where the chatterbait's all you need. Like you're going to just clean up on a chatterbait. I remember in 2021, there was a 12-day stretch in late February where 6 or 7 of the days were right around 60 degrees and the highs were in the upper 40s. So I'm hoping we get something like that this year, and I think the chatterbait will be amazing at that time because the fish will really perk up, the fishing pressure will have been low, and they'll be ready to feed. And I'll put just my normal, you know, like fluke or paddle tail trailer on these. You can definitely March through May. This is probably the first bait that I choose especially if I'm going for largemouth. But I really think in February, it's the great bait to cover some water and maybe catch that big fish. They get that one big bite. I like the Z-Man micro chatterbait, and I've been using the Dare Break since late last year. Caught a few fish on it as well. You could probably do the same thing with a crankbait. And so, there's a lot of things that go. But, these are the 3 that I'm going to use this year in the month of February. Now, as a bonus, the Ned rig, it's always good, right? This thing catches fish year round. Some days it's the only thing that I catch fish on. But I'll probably start throwing, if I hit the creeks in February, I'll probably throw the Hellgrammite a couple times too, just to see if the smallies are starting to wake up and if they want an early Hellgrammite snack. So there you have it. Those are the top 3 finesse lures that I'm going to be using in February to target bass. Got a jerkbait, got a jig, and I've got a chatterbait. Give those lures a try in February and see if maybe you can't catch something that's maybe threatens your personal best as well. So until next time, tight lines, and thanks for watching.